When we think of China, we think strict and controlled. But every nation has quirky laws. China, with its long history, has some real doozies. Laws so bizarre, you'll wonder if a pigeon brainstormed them. We've found obscure regulations and baffling bylaws. Buckle up for China's strangest rules and laws. Let's kick things off with a real head-scratcher, shall we? Imagine this. You're in Beijing, strolling down the street, enjoying the sights and smells of one of the world's most bustling cities. You come to a pedestrian crossing, the little green man lights up, you step out confidently, and promptly nearly get mowed down by a bus. Now you might think, right, typical big city driving, inconsiderate jerk behind the wheel, and you wouldn't be entirely wrong. But here's the kicker, that bus driver wasn't just being a jerk, he was following the bloody law. You see, buried deep within Article 40 of Beijing's traffic laws lies this: gem drivers of power-driven vehicles are expressly forbidden from stopping at pedestrian crossings. Yes, you heard that right, stopping illegal. Risking life and limb to cross the road? Just another Tuesday, apparently. Of course, there's a fine print, a whopping RMB 5, or a stern talking to awaits those who dare to prioritize human life over smooth traffic flow. 5 RMB, folks, that's like, what, 75 cents? The cost of a cup of questionable street coffee in most major cities. Now, you might be thinking, okay, John, that's clearly bonkers. Surely there's some logical explanation, some cultural context we're missing. And you know what? You're right to ask. We here at Last Week Tonight, we're all about digging deeper, about understanding the nuances. Some argue that it's about preventing sudden stops, about keeping the traffic flowing. Others whisper darkly about a shortage of pedestrian crossings back in the day, leading to this bizarre legal workaround. But let's be honest, it's China. There are a lot of people, a lot of cars, and sometimes it feels like the rules of the road are more like loose guidelines open to interpretation. And by interpretation, we mean just try not to hit anyone too badly, okay? Still, it does make you wonder about the conversations that must have happened when this law was being drafted. Okay, comrades, how do we solve this pedestrian problem? I know, let's make it illegal to stop for them. It's enough to make you want to reach for a stiff drink. Speaking of which, right, moving on from the mildly terrifying to the outright baffling. Our next stop on this whirlwind tour of China's legal oddities takes us deep into the heart of someone's basement, and friends, it's a real doozy. Picture this. You're a homeowner in China, just minding your own business, maybe doing a bit of DIY, when suddenly you get the urge to build your own personal arsenal, but not guns. Oh no, that would be far too pedestrian. No, you, my friend, are going for fireworks. And not just a few sparklers and a couple of Roman candles. We're talking industrial strength, light up the night sky, wake the neighbours 3 provinces over kind of fireworks. Now, you might be thinking, okay, that's a bit much even for a Tuesday, and you'd be right. But apparently this was such a common occurrence, such a widespread issue, that the Chinese government felt the need to step in and lay down the law. Thus, a law was born. A law so specific, so oddly charming in its way, that it deserves its own place in the annals of legal history. So what exactly does this masterpiece of legal intervention say? Chinese law forbids homeowners from storing more than 1 ton of explosives in their basement. That's the equivalent of a small car made entirely out of things that go boom. The law implies that many were stockpiling pyrotechnics. It's a thought both terrifying and oddly comforting. All right, strap in, folks, because we're about to delve into the weird, wild world of Chinese culinary law. Apparently, someone in China at some point decided to clarify that intentionally eating another man's wife is frowned upon. Frowned upon. Can you imagine the town hall meeting where this came up? Okay, new law proposal. No eating other dudes' wives. On purpose, anyway. I mean, what kind of legal system requires a law specifically prohibiting cannibalistic spousal snacking? Now, we here at China's Strangest Rules and Laws are not legal experts, but this whole intentional clause really throws a wrench in the works. Does that mean there's a legal loophole for consensual cannibalism? Imagine a couple sitting down with a lawyer, hashing out the details of their, shall we say, unconventional prenup. Look, honey, I love you, but if things go south, I want it in writing that I can add a sprinkle of you to my Sunday roast. It's a terrifying thought, but is it technically legal according to this baffling law? And what about the logistics? Does the wife get to choose how she's prepared? Can she request a specific spice rub? Again, we're not advocating for cannibalism here, but the lack of clarity in this law is truly remarkable. It's like the lawmakers just threw their hands up and said, look, as long as you're not chowing down on another dude's wife with malicious intent, we're not going to ask too many questions. It's a chilling thought, and frankly, it's put me right off my lunch. Let's move from cannibalistic law to workplace romance, Chinese style. One Guangzhou company plays Cupid with a baffling dating policy. Men face a year-long dating ban, women 3 months. Find love, your partner undergoes rigorous vetting. Earn 15,000 RMB a month, you're exempt. Love may be blind, but it spots a fat paycheck. Now, I'm no relationship expert, though my long-term relationship with this grapefruit La Croix might suggest otherwise. But this whole policy reeks of corporate overreach. It's like they're trying to micromanage their employees' love lives with the same fervor they reserve for quarterly reports. And what's with this salary exemption? Are they suggesting that money somehow makes you immune to messy breakups or awkward office encounters? Maybe they believe love is a luxury only afforded to the financially well-endowed. Honestly, this whole thing feels like a recipe for disaster. Imagine the clandestine office romances blossoming under the radar, fueled by forbidden love and the burning desire to stick it to the man, or in this case, the HR department. It's enough to make you want to swear off office romances altogether. But then again, where else are you going to find someone who understands the soul-crushing monotony of spreadsheet formatting? All right, let's move on from the minefield of workplace romance to the slightly less treacherous but equally absurd world of local vice regulations. Apparently some county-level officials in China have a rather unique approach to economics, force everyone to buy local, even if it means developing a chain-smoking, baijiu-guzzling workforce. One county in Hubei province decided that the best way to support their local cigarette industry was to essentially hold state employees hostage to a nicotine quota. Forget performance reviews, forget meeting deadlines. The real measure of your worth was how many locally produced cigarettes you could cram into your lungs. And lest you think they were only targeting smokers, another Hubei county decided to spread the love, or rather the liver damage, by implementing a similar scheme for baijiu, a potent Chinese liquor that could strip paint and melt steel. Employees were essentially forced to become amateur alcoholics, all in the name of local industry. We're talking 3 bottles a day, folks. That's enough to kill a small elephant, or at least give it a very memorable hangover. Now I'm all for supporting local businesses, but this is taking things a bit far, don't you think? It's like saying we're really struggling to sell these rusty sporks. New law, everyone must buy 5 rusty sporks a week or face the consequences. It's a classic case of government overreach, fueled by a bizarre mix of economic desperation and a complete disregard for personal choice. Imagine the office water cooler conversations. How's that lung cancer coming along, Steve? Oh, you know, gotta keep the local economy afloat, one cough at a time. Thankfully, the central government caught wind of this bureaucratic insanity and put a stop to it. Because even in China, there are limits to how much you can force people to smoke and drink in the name of local pride. It's a cautionary tale, really. A reminder that even in the 21st century, some officials are still stuck in the dark ages, clinging to the belief that they can control every aspect of people's lives, even their cigarette and baijiu consumption. All right, folks, buckle up because we're diving into ancient China, a time when fashion secrets were apparently guarded with the same ferocity as nuclear launch codes. We're talking about silk, that luxurious fabric that makes you feel like a pampered emperor, or at least like someone who can afford a decent dry cleaner. Turns out, during Imperial China, spilling the tea on silk production was a capital offense. That's right, revealing the intricate process of silkworms spinning their magic could get you tortured to death. You could say they took trade secrets to a whole new level. Now, you might be thinking, John, isn't that a bit extreme? And to that I say, have you ever felt the exquisite softness of high-quality silk? Clearly these ancient emperors hadn't discovered the joys of a good cotton-poly blend. They weren't messing around, and you know what? Considering silk making eventually did make its way out of China, one can only assume some unfortunate soul probably did face the wrath of the silk police. Let's just hope it was worth it for the global fashion industry. I mean, think about it. Imagine the pressure of possessing such a valuable secret. You're walking around, basically a one-person economic powerhouse, knowing that one slip of the tongue could end with you on the wrong end of some medieval torture device. Talk about stress eating. I bet even whispering about silkworms in your sleep could land you in hot water. Did you just mumble something about mulberry leaves, Jiangwei? Guards? It was probably a tense time to be alive, especially if you were a chatty Cathy with a side hustle in textile production. It really makes you appreciate the relative freedom we have today. Want to share your grandma's secret cookie recipe online? Go for it. Want to post a step-by-step guide to building a bookshelf on YouTube? No problem. Just try not to think about those poor souls who just wanted to talk shop about silk production. They probably wouldn't even survive 5 minutes on a modern-day fashion blog. Okay, folks, let's talk about baby names. You know, those sacred monikers parents agonize over for months, meticulously combing through baby books and arguing over whether Aloysius is too pretentious. Well, in China, the government has decided to lend a helping hand, or should I say, a controlling fist, to the naming process. Apparently, a man in Zhengzhou found himself on the wrong side of the law when he tried to name his son at yes, the @ symbol. You see, Chinese law dictates that all given names must be translatable into Mandarin. I guess someone forgot to tell the Ministry of Naming that the digital age doesn't really care about their antiquated rules. Now, I'm no linguist, but surely there's a Mandarin character that could represent the essence of at. Perhaps a symbol for connection, communication, or maybe just utter bewilderment at the audacity of this law. But no, instead of embracing the future and the ever-evolving nature of language, the Chinese government decided to go with the old reliable bureaucratic absurdity. Think about all the missed opportunities here, people. What if this poor child was destined to be a tech mogul, an email marketing guru, or perhaps the world's foremost expert on obscure punctuation marks? The name practically screams Silicon Valley prodigy. And let's not forget about the potential nicknames. Atticus has a nice ring to it, or how about Attila the 8? The possibilities are endless, but alas, the Chinese government, in their infinite wisdom, decided to crush this family's dreams of having a technologically advanced name. Look, I understand the need for some level of regulation when it comes to baby names. We don't want kids running around named after dictators or bodily functions, but at its 2023, people, get with the program. This poor kid is going to be stuck explaining his name for the rest of his life. Oh, my parents are just really into email. It's enough to make you want to send a strongly worded tweet to the Chinese embassy. Just make sure you use proper grammar. Wouldn't want to offend their delicate sensibilities. All right, folks, let's talk about a cultural practice that's both fascinating and deeply disturbing. Foot binding. Yes, you heard me correctly. For centuries in China, young girls endured the agonizing process of having their feet bound, all in the name of beauty and societal expectations. Now, I know what you're thinking. That sounds incredibly painful and barbaric, and you would be absolutely right, because it was. We're talking about breaking bones, folding toes under, and essentially turning feet into deformed, tiny clubs. all so women could fit into those dainty little shoes that were all the rage back in the day. Fashion, am I right? Thankfully, this horrific practice was outlawed after the founding of the People's Republic of China, which on the one hand is a fantastic victory for basic human decency and, not inflicting unnecessary suffering on children. But on the other hand, it's pretty bleak that such a law even had to be implemented in the first place. It's like saying, okay, everyone, from now on it's illegal to intentionally break your children's bones and then force them to walk on them for the rest of their lives. You'd think that would go without saying, wouldn't you? But hey, at least progress was made, right? It's a sobering reminder of how cultural norms can sometimes be incredibly messed up and how important it is to constantly challenge traditions that are harmful and cruel. And look, I'm all for celebrating cultural heritage and diversity, but let's be clear, foot binding was not some quirky custom. It was a form of systematic oppression that caused lifelong pain and disability for millions of women. So, while it's good to acknowledge this dark chapter in history, let's also celebrate the strength and resilience of Chinese women who fought against this barbaric practice and continue to fight for equality and bodily autonomy today. Because nobody, and I mean nobody, should have to sacrifice their health and well-being for the sake of outdated beauty standards. Alright, this next one might seem a tad over the top, but bear with me. In Guizhou Province, Luolang Elementary School children must salute every car that passes by. Since its implementation, car accidents involving children have dropped to 0. It seems this salute-a-thon has made everyone hyper-aware of each other's presence. This little Guizhou quirk does raise some interesting questions about cultural differences in approaching road safety. In the West, we tend to rely on a complex tapestry of traffic laws, signage, and the occasional sternly worded public service announcement featuring a talking crash test dummy. But in China, well, they've got kids saluting cars. And you know what? It seems to be working for them, which begs the question, could this be the answer to our global road safety woes? Should we all be saluting our metal overlords as they zoom past? Personally, I think I'll stick to looking both ways before crossing. But hey, if you're ever in Guizhou Province and see a gaggle of kids saluting your rental car, just give them a wave back. It's the polite thing to do. Okay, buckle up because we're going back in time for this one. Back in the hazy days of 1907, there existed a little-known Chinese republic nestled near Vladivostok called Iman. Now, Iman wasn't exactly known for its relaxed atmosphere. In fact, it had a rather, shall we say, direct approach to law and order. One of their more unique laws stated that any resident who failed to announce the approach of a Russian would face the ultimate penalty, death. Yes, you heard that right. Forget jaywalking or littering. Failing to shout "Russian approaching" loud enough could land you in a pine box. Now, we can only speculate about the historical context that led to this law. Perhaps relations with their Russian neighbors were a tad frosty. Maybe they'd perfected the art of passive-aggressive diplomacy. Or perhaps they just really valued a good heads-up when it came to unexpected visitors. And if you thought the announce to the Russian law was a bit much, wait till you hear about their stance on fur theft. In Iman, stealing someone's prized sable coat wouldn't just land you in a jail cell. Oh no, that would be far too merciful. Instead, they'd treat you to a delightful little punishment known as live burial. I know, it sounds like something out of a particularly grim Grimm's fairy tale, but sadly it was all too real. They weren't exactly big on rehabilitation back in Iman. So the next time you find yourself complaining about parking tickets or noise complaints, just be thankful you weren't living in Iman back in 1907. Because honestly, a parking ticket seems positively delightful compared to, being buried alive for pilfering a mink stole. Well, folks, there you have it. A whirlwind tour of some of China's most baffling, bizarre, and occasionally head-scratching rules and regulations. We've journeyed from the streets of Beijing, where stopping at a crosswalk is a punishable offense, to the hallowed halls of elementary schools in Guizhou, where saluting cars is apparently the key to road safety. We've delved into the murky depths of ancient imperial law and emerged blinking into the bright lights of modern-day internet company dating policies. And while some of these laws might seem utterly absurd, they offer a fascinating glimpse into the complexities of Chinese culture, history, and, let's face it, the human condition itself. Because at the end of the day, aren't we all just trying to navigate this crazy thing called life, one bizarre law at a time?